Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We love that intro music. It wants us fired up, getting ready to go after those bookies in finals week 2. Here for our NRL preview, we'll go through both the games and give you our best bets. Before we do so, let me welcome in my gorgeous co-host as always, Jacob Wynn. How are you going, my friend?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. I'm off a roller coaster of emotions from week 1. We started with a crushing double loss Friday night. Penrith rolled the Roosters by 20 points, sunk my 1 to 12 best bet, my try handicap best bet. After we kind of questioned whether Penrith would be razor sharp straight away to start the finals, they put in 20 minutes of pure perfection, out 22-0. My best bets and the mixed matchup couldn't ultimately recover despite couple of twists and turns, some moments of controversy. It was ultimately a punch in my mouth. And then I leaned to Sharks. So I am glad I didn't grab that 10.5. I didn't find that 7 days ago. They were dismantled by the Storm, as we know. I did also lean to Cowboys, who covered, but as I said on the recap, didn't deserve to cover that game, really. It was a lot closer than the 12-point margin. And then I am happy for several reasons, for pod followers' sake, for entertainment's sake. The finals ended on a real high note, week 1, that is. We got an enthralling eliminator Saturday night, but then followed by an instant classic Sunday. Manly triumph, an all-time comeback for the Seagulls, but the highlight for us being the Doggies winning the first half best bet and Winnie's Kitchen multi at $12, 250 odd of you guys riding with me. My best ever season of same game multis results the same year as best bets have been a disaster. Punting and NRL is a funny old game sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and yeah, those same game multis, you're taking usually a few, I guess, non-traditional safe options to get yourself a bit of juice, and that has been, it's been a season where a lot of things haven't played out how we thought it would exactly, and it has been awesome, mate. Now, only 2 games this round. We're in the semi-finals. Losers are all eliminated from this point in the season. How many best bets do you have for us this week?
Mate, I have a side I like in both contests, so I'll give them to you right now. Zach Brown comments, give me the favourites at the line all day, easy money. I hope you're right, Zach. I am going both home favourites. I'm going to go Cronulla minus 3.5 at $1.83 on Sportsbet, hosting North Queensland Friday night, followed by the Roosters minus 3.5. It's everywhere, but best price $1.90 Ladbrokes and Neds. Plenty of time to get in all the reasons why I am backing both these sides, but I do believe they are both the slightly better teams at home, given who's playing this weekend. A lot of pundits remember what they saw last, which was the Roosters and Sharks flogged 20 plus, while the Cowboys and Manly had very memorable wins. But it's a major step down in class, I'm sure we can all agree, from facing Penrith and Melbourne a week ago. By all means, listen to the full show before you decide which way you want to go on these guys, especially with the Roosters, with that line being a consensus 3.5. And if you disagree with me, maybe a little bit of pressure from the best bet finds you a 4.5 popping up on Manly if you want to go the other way. The Sharks line has already moved to 4.5 in most places, so I wouldn't wait as long if you think Cronulla can pick themselves up after playing far from their best last week, as I do. Really looking forward to talking through all the aspects of these matches with you as we see them, Clark. You don't have to tell me how you feel about my best bets right now because we've only got 2 games to cover, but I certainly can't wait to hear how you see these. And you're on the back of another successful Clarkey's Collect as well.
100%, mate. Big fan of your work. I'll keep my cards close to my chest in regards to where I'm going for each of these games. But I am in a position to give out Clarkey's Collect as well. And that is as simple as James Tedesco, anytime try. Now, it is his 250th NRL game. He's a big game player. We've seen him step up on the big stages pretty much his whole career, but particularly once he did arrive at the Roosters. Now, at the moment, that's $2.45 on Bet365. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Nicole from Wiki. I think this could be a good Clarkey's Collect to really test out the odds comparison tool for it. So once Nicole has that up on the Wiki website, you can go on there, go to that game, find James Tedesco, and see across all the bookies if a price better than $2.45 is available. Now, for the sake of bookkeeping here, we will use $2.45 as our measure for the bet winning, but I think it'd be a good opportunity for our followers to check out the odds comparison tool at their fingertips, mate. Alrighty, 2 games. We'll get into it in just one moment, but before we do so, we have a clip from the CEO of Top Sport. It is Mr. Tristan Merlehan.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merland here from Top Sport, and we had our first week of the finals done and dusted where there were three pretty clear-cut winners. I suppose North Queensland game went down to the wire and just covered the spread late. Then obviously the cracker on Sunday where Manly came from the clouds to beat the Bulldogs, where that was a very spirited betting affair. We ended up needing the Bulldogs, and the punters were a bit too good, with Manly firming quite significantly over the course of the week. Surprisingly, though, there was good support for the plus in both the Sharks game and the Roosters game. So it's very rare that when the minus covers in a big game like that, we end up just in front. It wasn't a big result by any means, but wasn't the end of the world, which I thought it may have been going into the weekend. So we moved to the round ahead, where there's been strong support already for the Sharks. We opened that line at 3.5, jumped over that key number of 4 to 4.5. But when we got to 4.5, there has been support for the Cowboys at the plus. The other game opened at 3.5 as well, the Roosters. We've left it there, but there has been support at the minus. So that has gone 185, 195. So the premiership betting, it's certainly cleared out to two outright favourites now, where the Storm and the Panthers are both 225. They're the only red figures in our book, and I don't see that changing coming to grand final week. So we're probably going to have a pretty ugly grand final day unless our team can really improve over the next fortnight. So away from that, the Sharks $13, the Roosters $15, Manly 16 and Cowboys 18. So it'll be interesting which two teams get through the weekend and then have to take on the heavyweights in week 3. Good luck if you're having a bet over the weekend. Of course, gamble responsibly.
I'm still on mute. Thank you very much to Tristan, as always, for that clip. We absolutely appreciate his exclusive market insights, and really no surprise when you to hear that Storm and Panthers are where the money rides. I know we've both got predictions on how we think these games will go, but the fact are they will then swap over. So let's say both favourites win. They then verse the opposite team that pumped them in finals week 1. So it's a tough task from here, isn't it, mate? But
for sure. But on that note, something that we covered on the extravaganza as well was playing futures, or what will the prices be in the prelims. Every bookie's got odds up now for make the final, which means you're already getting a price on what Penrith or the Storm approximately will be head-to-head without knowing the opponent, how hot that team comes in, where their injuries. And I'm seeing Melbourne and the Panthers both around $1.28 to make the final.
Is that both?
Which I predicted each.
Each. Okay.
So,
yeah.
and a Quinella paying $1.65 right now, which is basically 1.28 by 1.28. And I did predict about $1.25 for each. But on the note of Thursday, we discussed the theory, the best way to execute. If you like those favourites, that's one thing, but you still want to lock in the best price. Was it better to play them at the start of the finals? Was it better to roll your money over? I mean, if you'd played Melbourne was, 250 before last week, and now you can still find 230. So you would definitely be in a better position if you were rolling over money. But fair enough, I suppose Melbourne was a double chance team, so they could have lost last week. Similar story for Penrith, or, the example we tossed up there was the Quinella. Padonis tipped it, for example, at $3 on the Thursday show, and you can't knock that tip. And in fact, if you just played Penrith at $1.40 into Storm at $1.30 last week, then you'd have about $100 would be worth $185 now. And then if you rolled that into the Quinella at $1.65, you would return $300. And Padonis got $3 odds. So it's worked out about the same in that instance. And of course, those prices could go up or down depending on who actually gets through. I'd say if you still just can't see any alternative than Storm Panthers, you can take $1.65. Some people will see that as better than bank interest, and maybe you catch a break if a team comes in walking wounded. So something to think about, because I feel like everybody holds that opinion that we've got 4 teams playing this weekend and nobody's expecting them to play in the grand final. So there's ways to bet on that if that's what you believe.
Absolutely, mate. And it looks like you've got a huge fan in the YouTube chat as well. If you want to bring that comment up on screen while you do so, I will break down the start of game 1 for us. A little bit creepy. Friday, 7:50 p.m. Sharks host the Cowboys at Allianz Stadium. Line was -4.5 against the Sharks. There was no change to that after team lists. Siosifa Talakai, he remains at centre with Jesse Ramian still in doubt. For the Cowboys, no changes to their lineup from last round. Now, the Cowboys head down to Sydney. They take on the Sharks at kind of a neutral venue, I think you could argue, Winnie. How do you see this one breaking down? So you are very confident on the Sharks with your best bet?
Yeah, well, it's not a neutral venue to me. It's not the Sharks' home ground, but it's still being played in Sydney, and it's the Cowboys that have to hop on a flight if they can find tickets. If you saw that story today, so I've got an inkling that North Queensland will find a way there. If nothing else, start the road trip tomorrow. These sides met pretty recently. Round 21 in Townsville it was. The Cowboys got up by 8 points, but it's worth remembering wasn't a good spot for Cronulla. Not only were they without Nicho Hynes, we'll touch on whether that's a good or bad thing, but Will Kennedy was out too. North Queensland really needed the win at the time. The Cowboys, don't forget, at that stage in the season were fighting just to get into this final series. Prior to that match, the Sharks were a bit of a bogey side for North Queensland. I'll trust you to share the exact head-to-head record, but I have noted in the past, I don't buy into massively that North Queensland can't handle Cronulla. I can recall specifically multiple times when North Queensland and Cronulla just happened to meet over the Origin period, and the Cowboys were far below their best, and it wasn't a fair fight on those occasions. So it has meant that the record, the ledger between these two is a little more lopsided than reality, I would say. And then there was also the earlier match this year where the Sharks smoked the Cowboys, but I have to again say it's a fairly different North Queensland that makes the second visit to face Cronulla. In fact, the Cowboys come in off 4 straight wins. But what I've said about North Queensland all year is it's a wildly inconsistent team that has let themselves down in big moments too many times for mine. Everyone has a head scratcher here or there, but I listed last week how many strange, disappointing outings North Queensland had had. And I could nearly add last week to that. Yes, North Queensland won and covered, but really, I talked about it in the recap, 40 missed tackles in the first half alone at home in a finals game. Only try in the first half, a length of the field intercept. You dodge an almighty bullet the moment we're all talking about Ponga's pass misses the mark. I don't think North Queensland's here if that's a try. To the Cowboys' credit, they do answer the bell, find a decisive try, add an exclamation point, and have a shot in this for sure. But you're leaving it late, and I just don't have complete trust in North Queensland's ability to put it all together for 80 minutes, week in, week out. Though they named the same 17 that got the job done Saturday. And if you like North Queensland, let us know in the comments. There's an argument to be made that the best or the most trustworthy playmakers on the field are Tom Dearden and Scott Drinkwater. So let's talk about trustworthy playmakers, and leads me to Nicho Hynes. There's pundits this week even suggesting he should be dropped. And I won't lie. The thought crossed my mind last week in Melbourne when Nicho shanks the kick for touch, that if, with Atkinson on the bench, could you drag Nicho Hynes if you believed it gave you a better chance to win? But I thought, that, you can't burn Nicho like that long term. It doesn't even matter if Fitzgibbon has doubts over Nicho. He kind of has to ride him. And I really do feel this weekend is a pivotal moment in Nicho's whole career. It could be a career-defining type match. And you might bet on this game depending on whether you think Hynes is going to step up or whether he's going to crumble, because he can be a bit of a confidence player. I think it's being a little bit overblown. Yes, Nicho made mistakes, and not finding touch is the cardinal sin from a penalty in any game, but let alone when you're hanging by a thread in a finals match against the Melbourne Storm. But it wouldn't have made a difference last week. He's still a player that won a Dally M not that long ago, but I think Nicho, you might be able to tell me, Nicho's on a 5 or a 6 year extension as well at the Sharkies, massive money, and has yet to win a finals game with this club. This is his biggest game in a Cronulla jersey, and I think Cronulla have the team to do it and to rally. Melbourne is going to make anybody look bad, especially when the Storm have that astonishing completion rate as they did on Saturday, with a fair share of possession, which is what I envision Cronulla can enjoy in this one. It's the Sharkies that pack more punch from the backfield, and that's not including Ramian, who could return. He's a chance in the reserves. And I also think Cronulla's got the strongest selection of middle forwards that can win the Sharks the yardage battle. So, putting last week aside again, because I can't talk up a defense of a team that let in 37 too much, but compared to what we've seen out of North Queensland all year, that Cronulla is the tougher and more defensively sound side. That is generally what wins you finals games. Night conditions suits the top 4 side to me more so as well. And the Cowboys, as well as being a little inconsistent historically, are not always convincing in Sydney. Anyway, Cronulla covers the game for mine.
I think I start on Nicho Hynes there. He is locked in until the end of 2028 on $1 million plus deal per report. So I just think people this week that are saying Hynes should have been benched, it just doesn't make sense to me, right? So if you do win this game, you've then got your best player down on confidence in a prelim. You don't know where you're starting next season. Don't like it at all. Yes, he had a few bad moments against Sharks, but he is still the best playmaker in this team. And your sentiments around the Cowboys there, Winnie, certainly I shared them. And I shared them last week, and that's why I tipped the Knights at the line. But when I break this one down, I look at both of these sides, and they have met twice in the regular season, both winning at their respective home grounds. I think of more significance between those two games was round 7, when both sides were relatively full strength. That was in Sydney, and the Sharks won that by a 36-point margin. When they met in Townsville, I believe the Sharks lost 22-8. They were missing Nicho Hynes in that one. Now, the Cowboys, this stat here did surprise me. They are 5 from 7 in Sydney this year. And when I was going through, I thought they were a poor side in Sydney. That did surprise me. But there's a lot of wins there where they're versing sides whilst they're under strength, such as the Roosters, such as the Panthers during the Origin period, and then also a game against the Tigers. So there's 3 out of 5 straight off the top of my head where it was favourable in their matchup. When I look at last week between these two sides, as strange as it sounds, I actually expect the Sharks to be the fresher side. I think just because they got mauled. They weren't having to fight tooth and nail, whereas the Cowboys genuinely got into a big dogfight and an arm wrestle with the Knights, and that meant they had to compete for, let's call it 77 minutes until Leo Thompson comes off the top rope with that coat hanger there. So I would say that the Sharks will be a little bit fresher. I was more impressed with the Cowboys last round. I won't deny that, particularly defensively. But outside of Ponga, the Knights did not look dangerous. And I don't see the Sharks having a player of the caliber of Kalen Ponga to repeat that. So that is a bit of a warning sign there, I suppose. Now, Sharks have won 11 of their last 13 over the Cowboys. One of those losses was this year. Prior to that, they were, I think, 11 from 12. So really, really good. But of course, the big stat that everyone has been talking about, the Sharks are staring down the barrel of 8 straight finals losses in a row. So to me, when I decide this game, it really comes down to that stat. Do you believe that can galvanize the Sharks, with this being their quote-unquote most winnable finals game they've had in their prior 7 losses? Or is it simply in their heads and it's too much to overcome mentally? I'm not certain either way, so I can't play on that factor. So I turn to this as my final factor, and here's why I prefer the Sharks. Both sides can turn up in attack. They average 26 and 27 points respectively throughout the regular season. But when we talk defense between these two sides, I don't think the Cowboys can match it with the Sharks. I have seen the Sharks win games with their defense this year. For the most part, I can't say the same about the Cowboys. They win with attack. So that does make me lean to the Sharks pretty heavily, if I'm absolutely honest. I believe the Sharks' game plan, if they can implement it well, particularly in the first half like they did against the Storm, that game plan will be much more effective against a Cowboys side who will be worn down and tired. They've got players like Reece Robson, who's played the whole season and all 3 Origins in their middle, for example. And when we got to halftime last week, let's not lie to ourselves. The Sharks are in it. They were only down by a try. Now, they're always behind the Storm, but they were in it. The Storm pivoted. They adjusted. They shown their premiership muscle. They shown their rep experience. They pivoted the game plan and blew Sharks out of the water. Now, I haven't seen the Cowboys really do that this year, and I'm not sure they have the experience in their spine. I know they've got some rep players, but they don't have that experience like Harry Grant and Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes, who are the elite of the elite in their position. So when I tie that all together, Winnie, my prediction here is the Sharks winning, and I do believe they will cover that line also.
I've got a tip from Nicole. Actually, I think he's given us a tip for both games. We'll listen to it now because one will be for the match we've just discussed, and then it'll lead us into Roosters Manly. Real nitpick there because I think you said that North Queensland beat the Sharks 22-8. I'm just wondering where you got that. I had it 30-22, so by 8. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I said the wrong thing. I meant by 8. Yep, I got you.
Yeah, just a little fact check there. Let's listen to Nicole it's always a good omen if he picks a player to score from the team that we
Hey
like.
everyone, it's Nicole for Wiki. Hope you guys are pumped up for week 2 of the NRL finals. Got a couple of prices. I'm recording this just before 5 p.m, so I hope the prices make it to when you guys see this. But both on Bet365, the hookers for their respective teams. We've got Reece Robson, $10 to score a try anytime, and Lachlan Croker, $13 to score a try anytime, both on Bet365. As I mentioned, look, clear out live prices. These prices don't stick around for too long, so if you do see this and you like the price, get on as soon as possible. All the best, part responsibly. Catch you guys next week.
Well, he's gone the Gus Gould there. He's gone an each way better gangsters, but nonetheless, that is Nicole's tip there for try
That's
scorers.
right. I hadn't heard that yet, so of course he's picked a Cowboy and a Seagull. Well, we can still middle that and see how we go.
Absolutely. The beauties of being live. Alrighty, guys. Game 2, Saturday, 7:50 p.m. Roosters host the Seagulls. We stay at Allianz Stadium. Line was set at -3.5 against the Roosters, and there's been no change since team lists. No changes at all to Manly 17. For the Roosters, Jared Warrior-Hargraves starts, so that keeps Terrell May on the bench this time. Nahafua White moves to lock, so Nat Butcher moves to the bench. Zach Docker-Clay, he's 18th man, so we have an all-forwards bench. And I believe Victor Radley was named in the reserve, so technically a chance to return there for them as well. What I've got this one down as, Winnie, is two sides that have shown great attacking flair throughout the regular season. They meet with their season on the line, and you prefer the Roosters, mate. So break it all down for us, please.
And this was a tough one because I talked about the Roosters' chances, and you could call the loss to Penrith a bit of a dreams being dashed moment. It's a long road now to the grand final, but of course, I'm a Roosters lover. I've kind of admitted that myself this year. I've probably backed the Roosters one too many times. I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see the complete Roosters in these finals. They're not quite done yet, and the Roosters, although having a horrendous record against Melbourne as well, I don't feel that there's a massive fear factor there because it's also been a pretty great rivalry between those sides. Anyway, you've got to get past Manly first, and Manly probably comes in with more of a spring in their step. In fact, the Seagulls would be on cloud 9 after an all-time win, and I don't usually want to bet against a side like that, but why don't we start by stating the obvious? Tom Trbojevic does not look right, and I said in the recap, I quickly checked myself, even at the time, saying Manly won without leaning on Turbo. I mean, Turbo still had a game-high run, something like 26 runs, game-high meters. Turbo was massive for Manly, but if you watched it, you could see everything was such hard work. Turbo could barely move properly, couldn't play with force, was a shell of himself, just trying to pour everything in to this team and hoping that others could create. And I feel like Turbo, he has a hand in a couple of the tries, even if it is a little bit as a decoy. But how often does Manly win a big game without a direct game-breaking play from Tom Trbojevic? That makes that win even more miraculous and hard to replicate. And I go back to, why not? Let's talk about the Winnie's Kitchen multi again. $12 odds, you beauty. Crichton scores that try off the kick in behind from Burton. Crichton doesn't score that if Turbo can dive. Trbojevic is running. He can see the boiler, and he's got this agonizing look on his face because he kind of knows it's just within reach. And straight after Critter scores, Turbo goes to ground and is wincing and holding his shoulder yet again. You know, what can you expect? There's a short turnaround as well. Turbo's going to do everything he can for this team, and it is inspiring. But we talk about two different Manlys, one with or without Turbo. And the Roosters will have seen that as well. And I find it hard to see Manly being able to generate a lot of points in this game. I look at when they've met previously. Yes, Manly was too good all the way back in round 2. That's a long time ago, and that was an afternoon game in Brookie. I look more recently to where the Roosters got the better of Manly, and it was a wild finish, and the scoreline's going to tell you that it was within a try, but that was the game where the Seagulls scored not once, not twice, but 3 times from intercepts, including twice in the final 5 minutes. That made it a little closer. just like Manly Bulldogs last week, where Kikau versus Olakuatu was like a heavyweight bout and worth the price of admission on its own. This time we get Crichton versus Hamole, which is just an awesome individual matchup to look out for. I look at where the Roosters fell a little bit short. Good news for the Roosters, they don't have to play Penrith again this week. But the Roosters were beaten to the punch physically. Warrior Hargraves is not the same player anymore, but if there's anything he's going to be able to add to the first 20 minutes of the game, it may be just that in terms of the intensity, which is going to be important because you just can't let your opponent get the jump on you if you're the Roosters. Again, we have not seen the best of the Chooks for the last few weeks. It was a disaster against the Raiders in more ways than one. But I think that people may have forgotten that the Roosters can still play at a higher level than Manly can. The 2 extra days to prepare for this game is highly valuable at this time of the year, where the Roosters come in off the Friday and the Manly, of course, plays Sunday Arvo. I think there's an aerial advantage with the wingers, and I know that's ironic to say that because it killed the Roosters, those drops by Tupou, but it still has to be a tactic that the Roosters are looking for, especially when Saab, I know Saab's in the reserves, but if Saab doesn't play, I know that Hopewadi caught a bomb at a very opportune time before halftime to set up a try. That was a game-defining or a game-changing play, but reality of having Dom Young and Tupou out there, and it's more than just an attacking kick. That those matchups, and you throw in Manu and Swali in the centres, when we get we get a dropout or something like that. Having these athletes out there, I do think it's an advantage to the Roosters. These great leapers. I'm looking at the bench. I see more coming onto the field for the Roosters as well. And you've got Radley looming in the reserves, as you mentioned. And then my number one factor why I will lay the 3.5 with the Roosters, I have Trent Robinson's coach side against Anthony Seibold.
Hey, you really don't like Seibold, huh?
I'm not his biggest fan, but the further that Manly goes, he will prove me wrong. I was one of the people saying you wanted, of all the coaches you could sign and replace Hasler with, you went for a guy that Brisbane paid $1 million to leave town. But I have to admit, Manly's performed better than I expected this season. If they win this game, then they'll get the better of me again.
Just remember, Seibold will win the Broncos a premiership. I saw it in the newspaper, and the newspaper never lies, mate.
At least he made the finals, unlike Broncos this year.
Yeah, fair enough there. Mate, they don't tell a lie either, mate. They are playing finals. There's no ifs. Interesting there for the Broncos, mate. But I'll be honest, this was actually a tough one to break down for me. These sides are both 1-1 against each other this year. They've met at Brookvale, which was right after Vegas, so maybe a bit of a hangover there for both sides. And then they also met at this ground where the Roosters won. My question mark over the Roosters, and I think this is a fair one, we've only had the opportunity to see them play one good game without Walker and Smith. Now, the Raiders one was poor. They got injured during the game, so I don't think it's fair to use that as a full measure. And then there's last week against the Panthers, which was obviously not good by any measure. So that leaves the Rabbitohs game. And in that Rabbitohs game, I thought they did play relatively well for 70 minutes. But that does stand out as a concern for me for 2 reasons. Number one, the Rabbitohs are nowhere near the level of the Sea Eagles. And number 2, the Sea Eagles actually won last week in that final 10-minute period, which was where the Roosters did fall away against the Rabbitohs. Now, I do have, mitigating factors for that. They did take off Luke Keary. They did switch off. And in all fairness, I think if we were able to see a larger snapshot with Sandon Smith at halfback and Connor Watson at hooker, we probably wouldn't be bringing that up as a stat. But that is how it sits currently. Then when I look across the fence to the Roosters, here's the 2 factors I'm weighing in for them most significantly. Number one, it is James Tedesco's 250th NRL game, and we have consistently seen them do milestones very well this season. I think of Jared Warrior-Hargraves' 300th as an example, but it just feels every time there's a milestone game on this year, the Roosters have turned up in a big way. And number 2, they are very strong at Allianz Stadium. They have made it a fortress this year. Now, if we can look past the Raiders win, where they suffered drastic injuries during it, and we can look past the Cowboys win, where they lost by 2 points whilst missing their origin periods, the only other sides they've lost to Allianz Stadium this year full strength, Panthers and Storm. And they're in a league of their own, as most people would agree. So when I weigh those two factors against each other, I think there's mitigating factors for the two reasons why I would take Manly. But for those reasons there, we've got a milestone game and we know they're at Allianz. And I think if we go off the regular season, we would acknowledge Manly, the Roosters are the strongest side over the Sea Eagles. So for me, I am balancing a few different pros and cons there each way. But I do think Roosters when I tie that all together. And I also think Roosters will win at the line, Winnie. So I held my cards close to my chest, mate. But we are both seeing the football this round the exact same.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, especially as we said, since we've tracked your betting and we're putting a stake against it. You're plus 14 units. You won last week as easily as you could like. I made a comment about Saab. I must have read that too quickly that it was only I thought Saab may be a chance of being in the reserves, but the comment I must have read that he's not even in the reserves. So yeah, it was noticeable even when Manly was under the pump, sometimes Manly would go long from a dropout or just put it in a position where they couldn't really compete with the outside backs of the Dogs. So I do feel like the athleticism of the outside backs is a bit in the favour of the Roosters. You know what else, mate? I've also got a mixed matchup. Usually this isn't created till Wednesday, but, with only 2 games to cover, I had the time to negotiate it with Toppy. So I'll share that one right now. I'm just kind of pasting it in. So I do like both games, and I was trying to find a way to link in both matches. I couldn't quite do it because I like both favourites. So I'm bringing in the AFL. The prelims are on this weekend. Brisbane got a famous win, and I think are in an advantageous matchup. The Lions, I know they're not always a happy hunting ground at the MCG, but I give the Lions a real chance against Geelong. So I'm going to pair that game with the Roosters. Roosters are also on Saturday, so this is like a Saturday doubleheader. The AFL is actually on a little earlier, and it's Roosters' better result than Geelong. Roosters are a 3.5-point favourite. Geelong are a 4.5-point favourite. So they're both really similar in terms of expectation. AFL scoring, of course, is a little more volatile. A team can win, by 40 or 30 points a little bit more easily. So it's going to hinge on how well the Lions do perform in the earlier game. And better result is paying $2.35, max stake $200. You can have on that on Toppy. Better result meaning if Geelong wins, Roosters have to win by more points than the Cats did. If Geelong lose, Roosters have to win or lose by 1 less point or less than Geelong, if that makes sense. It's a pretty good value way to tie in AFL, and I feel like even casual followers of AFL, this may be the first weekend you watch some AFL because sadly we're down to 2 games of NRL, and you got a couple of AFL prelims, which are always massive occasions.
It's literally the only time am I on mute? No, I'm not. It's literally the only time I watch the AFL, man. The prelims and the grand final. Don't know many players, don't even know all the full rules, but there's something about finals footy, whether it's any code really, finals sport in general, man, is incredible. Now, do we have a try scoring tip from Nicole here for this game?
He went Croker. I think was $10.
Oh, right. My apologies. Yeah. So you said them both in the last
He had
round.
the hooker for both underdogs this weekend. Both I think was same price, about $9.50 or $10 on 365.
My apologies. I mixed Croker up there with Blake Brayley for the Sharkies, so I thought there could have been another one there. Alrighty, only a shorter show, so we've only been going for 34 minutes, but just to quickly recap, Clarkey's collect this week is James Tedesco to score at any time. That is currently $2.45 on Bet365, and both of your best bets are, Winnie?
My best bets are Sharks minus $3.5, 83 Sportsbet, Roosters minus $3.5, $1.90, Ladbrokes and Neds.
Love it, mate. All right, guys, that is where we will close our show today. Just a quick admin point for myself. I am on a family holiday, so I will miss our recap show for this, and I think I'll miss our preliminary finals preview show as well. Pending internet availability, I'll try to get some clips through, at least for that preliminary preview there, guys. But from myself, thank you very much. Enjoy finals footy, and over to you, Winnie, for the last word.
Yeah, have a great holiday, mate. I don't have many friends, but I may find a friend or two that can join forces and add some extra insights to the recap and the preview pod as well. So Enjoy your footy this week, guys. As always, let us know what you think about my plays, Clarkey's plays, or anything that stands out to you yourself. Always love chopping it up in the comments. Have a great week. Enjoy your weekend. See you Sunday for the recap.